Welcome. Today we're going to be looking at the source material you provided on the life of the actor and musician Cory Monteith.
Yeah, it's a really comprehensive and frankly heartbreaking collection of details.
It really is. It paints this picture of someone who was, catapulted into this massive international fame.
Right, all while fighting this incredibly fierce, very personal battle with addiction. A lifelong battle.
And that contrast, that's really the central thread that runs through all of this material, isn't it? The public success just masking this private chaos.
It is. Our sources give us a very clear chronological narrative. We can trace his journey right from a childhood that was marked by a lot of instability, through his defining role as Finn Hudson on Glee, and then ultimately to his tragic and untimely death at just 31 years old.
So our focus today is to conduct a detailed analysis of all this material. We're going to respectfully put together the crucial context, starting right from the roots of his difficulty,
Right.
and going all the way through to the powerful impact of his work. It's a discussion that requires a lot of sensitivity, so we're sticking strictly to the reported facts.
And to the narrative that's been documented in this compilation.
Exactly.
And the strength of this material is really in its biographical structure. It lets us follow a clear timeline, and that makes the connections between his difficult early life and the immense pressures of his later career very, very explicit.
Yeah, to understand this struggle, you really have to start at the beginning. You have to appreciate the foundation it was all built on.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's unpack this early history then, because the roots of his later struggle are so clearly visible here.
They really are.
So Cory Michael Monteith, was born on May 11th, 1982. This was in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And his family background, his mother, Anne McGregor, was an interior decorator, and his father, Joe Monteith, was a soldier. He was in the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. He also had an older brother, Sean.
And what stands out immediately in the material is the major disruption that happened so early in his life. His parents divorced when he was only 7 years old.
7? That's so young.
It is. And this wasn't just a standard separation. The sources really suggest the consequences were severe for him.
So after the divorce, he and his brother were raised by their mother in Victoria, British Columbia.
Right. And because his father was in the military, specifically deployed and serving, Cory saw very, very little of him after the divorce.
And you have to imagine that lack of a consistent guiding male figure in those really crucial formative years, coupled with the instability of a move, the breakup of the family unit, it seems to have had a profound emotional effect.
The sources are clear on that. They note that he experienced marked social difficulties at school during this time. We're talking about an emotional strain that he was clearly internalizing.
It's hard to gauge the specific emotional fallout, of course, but the consequences of that internal strain they started manifesting externally by the time he was 13.
And this is the critical turning point. By 13, he began using alcohol and marijuana.
And started playing truant from school regularly.
Exactly. And this wasn't, just typical adolescent experimentation, which is common. This was the recognized onset of a dependency issue that would become a chronic challenge for the rest of his life.
And the impact on his education was immediate and severe. If you just look at the records, he attended an astonishing 16 schools in total during his youth.
16! That number is it's staggering.
It is. And it doesn't just represent educational instability. It really speaks to a deep, profound sense of rootlessness, of displacement.
He was constantly moving through different educational environments, including, as the sources note, various alternative programs that were specifically designed for troubled teens.
But the attempt to find a stable environment it failed. And the sources confirm he eventually dropped out of school entirely at 16.
And what's really chilling is that by the time he dropped out, his drug and alcohol dependency had already escalated significantly.
The need for the substance just took precedence over everything else.
It did.
And that's the moment the cost of his addiction started to become visible to his family, to his friends. It started leading to real-world consequences. By 16, he was committing petty crimes, specifically to fund his habits.
The material explicitly reports that he was stealing money, stealing from friends and family.
And that level of desperation is such a classic symptom of dependency, isn't it?
It is. It's when an individual sacrifices their most important relationships, their moral framework, just to maintain the addiction.
It just highlights how quickly the substance use took control of his entire decision-making process.
And the situation became so untenable, so dangerous, that it required a formal life-saving intervention.
Right. This pivotal moment happened when he was only 19 years old.
19. His mother and a group of friends, they staged a formal intervention, which then led him to attend his first rehabilitation program.
This early attempt at recovery, before his 20th birthday, it just underscores the sheer severity and the length of the battle he was already fighting.
It really does.
And the sources have this quote from him from around that time where he's reflecting on it all, on the necessity of that intervention. He actually said, "I'm lucky on so many counts. I'm lucky to be alive."
And that's just chilling to hear, isn't it? Especially when you consider the later tragedy.
It is. But it shows he had this clear-eyed awareness of the high stakes involved, even as a very young man. He knew he was on a destructive path.
He did. And if we look at the period between that first intervention and when he finally broke into acting, you see this fascinating set of experiences.
The jobs he held.
Exactly. An incredibly wide array of non-acting jobs. It illustrates a life defined by, necessity and blue-collar work.
The list is extensive. He was a Walmart Canada people greeter,
right,
a taxi cab driver, a mechanic, a school bus driver, a roofer.
And a drummer for a few local bands.
You can just picture the trajectory. This isn't the background of a typical Hollywood actor. These experiences, the constant grinding labor, the transient nature of the work, it speaks to a deep authenticity.
And maybe an ongoing struggle for just economic stability in those years after dropping out and going to rehab.
And that authenticity, the sort of grounded nature that came from that difficult early life, it actually becomes a key factor in his later success. We'll see that when we get to his casting.
It does. But before we move on, there's a really lovely detail from later in his life that kind of rounds out this section.
Oh, right. The diploma?
Yeah. The sources note that he eventually received his high school diploma in 2011. This was years after dropping out and well into his Glee fame.
And it came from an alternative school he'd attended previously in Victoria.
Which suggests this quiet persistence, this desire to finally close that chapter successfully, even after he'd already achieved global recognition.
It's a really pregnant detail.
It is.
So now we transition from that deep instability of his early life to his really unexpected professional ascent.
Right. His acting career began in Vancouver, British Columbia, around 2004.
And he started building his resume with small roles. He made his debut in the TV series Stargate Atlantis in 2004.
And this was the start of several years of just grinding work in the Canadian television scene. He secured minor roles, guest appearances in major shows that filmed in Vancouver.
Shows like Smallville and Supernatural in 2005.
And films like Final Destination 3 in 2006. This period is critical because it establishes him as a working, dedicated actor who is really paying his dues in a competitive regional market.
And it's worth noting the context of his training here. The sources mentioned he began taking acting classes with Anthony Mindel.
That's right. It was a path he took after a suggestion from a casting director, Maureen Webb.
And after that, he secured more steady roles. There was a recurring part in the series Kyle XY, and then a leading role as Gunnar in the MTV series Kaya in 2007.
So he was moving up the ladder, slowly but surely. Still far from a household name, though.
And then came the moment that changed absolutely everything.
The Glee phenomenon.
Which launched in 2009. His role as Finn Hudson would define his public identity. But the process of getting that part, that's where it gets really interesting.
It's completely unconventional, especially for a musical television show.
Okay, let's pause on that first audition tape because it speaks volumes about his starting point.
Yeah.
His agent, Alina Kirshner, she initially submitted a video of him just drumming.
Right. Not singing, not acting out a scene, just drumming. And he was using pencils and Tupperware containers because he didn't have a drum kit.
So this tells us he was being marketed primarily on his, rough-hewn charm and his looks, not his vocal prowess.
Exactly. And the series creator, Ryan Murphy, he did take notice of the video. He found the personality appealing, but he had a firm prerequisite. For Glee, musical ability was non-negotiable. And since Monteith completely lacked any theatrical, stage, or vocal experience...
He had to send in a singing sample immediately. He had to prove he could at least carry a tune.
Which led to the now famous second submission. He flew down to Los Angeles for the full mass audition, but only after sending in a musical tape.
And on that tape, he sang in his own words a cheesy 80s music video-style version of REO Speedwagon's Can't Fight This Feeling.
You can just tell he was trying to mask the inexperience with charm and humor.
And that masking, that attempt to present himself with this rough charm, is precisely what won him the role.
It is. It's a classic example of potential outweighing raw technical skill. The sources confirm his vocal skills were initially considered weak by the casting team.
But one of the casting directors pointed out that he captured Finn Hudson's most elusive and necessary quality.
Naive, but not stupid sweetness.
That's it. They weren't hiring a perfect singer or dancer. They were hiring an essence.
That raw, somewhat vulnerable authenticity, which you can trace right back to his difficult, rootless upbringing, the casting team read that as the character's core innocence.
So the reality of the high school dropout ironically made him the perfect fit to play the high school jock who finds his true identity.
And the success of that casting choice led him to reflect deeply on his own journey. He provided a quote about the process that connects directly to this whole search for belonging and purpose.
He said, "I was like a lot of kids, looking for something to be interested in, something to be passionate about."
And then he said, all you need is permission, not only for Glee, but for anything in life.
It really sounds like he saw the Glee Club as the permission that both he and his character so desperately needed.
It does.
So with the role secured, he quickly became a global celebrity. Finn Hudson was established as the star quarterback of William McKinley High School's football team.
Right, and his main conflict was the risk of social alienation he faced by joining the school's Glee Club, the New Directions.
He was at the peak of the social hierarchy.
Yeah.
But his talent, his passion, it forced him to descend that social ladder.
And his storylines were constantly about navigating that difficult social balance. He had to try and maintain his popular reputation and the respect of the jocks,
while fully embracing his love for the club, which was firmly at the bottom of the social food chain.
And romantically, of course, the sources detail that massive love triangle that just captivated audiences in the early seasons.
His attraction and relationships with Quinn Fabray, the head cheerleader, and Rachel Berry, the Glee Club's star, that relationship drama was just foundational to the show's early popularity.
It was. And what's particularly insightful is Monteith's own analysis of his character's development across the 4 seasons he completed.
He felt Finn had to grow up a lot. He wanted to move past that initial stereotype.
He noted, Finn's not dumb anymore, really. He's just a little naive. And that comment speaks to his desire to inject genuine depth and growth into the character,
transforming the dumb jock into a genuine leader and eventually a teacher figure by the time the series reached its later seasons.
And the critical reception really mirrored his growth. Initially, reviews for the pilot were mixed, but as he settled into the role, critics began to truly appreciate his natural talent.
Right. I remember one review, reflecting on his later work, noted, "It's been a while since we've gotten some Finn focus, and I think I just missed Cory Monteith. But I also forgot what a good natural actor he can be."
That wasn't just praise for a star, it was a recognition of the honest performance he was giving.
And his professional success was substantial. He was a key part of the ensemble that won the 2009 Screen Actors Guild Award
for outstanding performance in a comedy series.
He also personally won the 2011 Teen Choice Award for Choice TV, Actor Comedy.
And it's crucial context that, despite his initial vocal weakness, the demands of the show meant he sang lead or joint lead on a massive number of songs. He essentially became a professional singer through sheer osmosis and dedication.
But beyond the relentless demands of Glee, he quietly sought this creative refuge in music that was totally separate from the show's pop focus.
Right. Around 2010, he joined a Canadian indie rock band called Bonnie Doon.
And what's compelling here is the connection. He actually met the band's lead singer, Justin Wolshinski, years earlier on the set of Kaya,
one of his earliest television roles. It's a nice full circle moment.
Bonnie Doon offered him a space to just be a musician on his own terms. He didn't seek the spotlight here.
No, he served as the band's drummer and provided backup vocals. He was actively contributing to the songwriting process.
Being the drummer, literally sitting behind the band, far from the central microphone he held on Glee, that must have offered a private, grounded escape from that intense, singing quarterback persona.
I think so. And the band was active. They performed their debut U.S. show in L.A. in January 2011 and played at various clubs and festivals.
The group continued working right up until his death, and their debut single, Maybe Tonight,
which is one of 6 tracks he actively performed on and helped produce.
It was released posthumously on the Miramar EP in February 2014. It's this quiet legacy that speaks to his authentic, non-Hollywood creative interests.
And while he was maintaining Glee and his band, he also sought out other film work to challenge himself.
Right, this included the romantic comedy Monte Carlo in 2011 and the film Sisters and Brothers that same year. You see a clear pattern. He wasn't content to just cash in on his television fame. He was seeking diverse material.
And that trajectory led him toward heavier, more dramatically taxing material later in his career. The sources highlight his role in the Canadian film All the Wrong Reasons.
In that, he played James Asher, a big-box department store manager whose wife is struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder.
And the director noted that Monteith was particularly excited to play a character his own age. It was described as a heavy role, a deliberate attempt to shed the high school persona and deal with mature adult themes.
That desire to play real grounded struggle. It perhaps connects directly back to his own life experiences.
And he was so committed to this film that he was flying back to Los Angeles on the weekends just to do promotional work for Glee while filming this serious drama.
That shows a powerful dedication to his craft, far exceeding what was required of a television star.
Absolutely. And finally, in looking at this massive period of fame, we have to acknowledge his impressive philanthropic efforts.
Which are perhaps the most genuine indicator of his character.
I think so. He used his platform for causes that were close to his heart, revealing this intensely supportive nature toward others who felt marginalized or unstable.
He was a strong vocal supporter of LGBT rights. He collaborated extensively with the Trevor Project,
which is a suicide prevention and crisis intervention organization for LGBTQ youth.
And he also filmed a public service announcement in 2011 for Straight But Not Narrow.
That's an online organization focused on promoting respect and encouragement from young straight people toward their gay counterparts. Given his experience as a societal outsider growing up, his advocacy here feels particularly personal.
It really does.
And his community work wasn't limited to national causes either. He was involved in Project Limelight,
a nonprofit performing arts group for children in the impoverished Vancouver downtown East Side area.
He was ensuring vulnerable children had access to creative outlets. And he was also involved with Chrysalis, which helps homeless and low-income people maintain employment, and he served as an ambassador for Virgin Unite.
These endeavors just solidify this image of an engaged, compassionate individual who understood struggle and actively worked to alleviate it.
Now, we have to turn to the serious and very difficult final period of his life, which tragically circles right back to the substance abuse issues he'd been fighting since his early teens.
And to provide context here, we have to first discuss his most significant adult relationship with his co-star Lea Michele.
Right. They first worked together in 2008, cast as the central, iconic love interests Rachel Berry and Finn Hudson on Glee.
Their real-life relationship developed later. It was first reported publicly in early 2012, and it lasted until his death a year and a half later.
And the intense public scrutiny surrounding their coupling, given their fame, it just added another layer of pressure to an already unstable private life.
Months after his passing, Lea Michele provided some insight into his nature. She described him as a very private person.
Their bond was clearly profound. She later released several commemorative songs, including If You Say So, which she began writing a week after his death.
And it references his final words to her.
Yes. She also released Hey You in 2017, viewing it as a follow-up, a continued dialogue with his memory. These creative works provide a heartbreaking, if indirect, window into the depth of their connection and her grief.
This intense privacy surrounding his personal struggle is why the next public announcement was such a shock to the world. On March 31st, 2013, his publicist announced that he had voluntarily checked himself into a treatment facility for substance addiction.
Building on that first treatment he received when he was just 19 years old, this was a clear sign that despite all the fame, the core battle was ongoing and had flared up again.
But what's critical for you to understand is the behind-the-scenes decision-making that led to this admission.
The sources clarify that this March 2013 rehab admission was the result of an emergency intervention staged by Glee co-creator Ryan Murphy, the cast, and the crew.
An intervention that took place right there on the Paramount studio lot.
Which illustrates the immediate severity of the crisis.
Imagine the weight of that moment. Your entire support system, your professional family, mobilizing in an emergency to confront you.
The sources confirm they urged him to immediately accompany doctors to a rehab facility they had already arranged.
And the fact that he agreed instantly speaks volumes about that constant internal desire he had to get clean, even when the disease of addiction had resurfaced.
He was immediately written out of the final 2 episodes of Glee's 4th season, but he was given this crucial, reassuring promise
that his job was absolutely safe upon his return.
And that level of professional and personal loyalty from the production company and the showrunners, it just underscores the high regard they held him in and their commitment to his recovery.
He completed his treatment successfully on April 26, 2013. It was roughly a month-long stay, and he was released back to his life in Los Angeles.
But sadly, that period of recovery was incredibly brief before the final tragic incident occurred.
While he was visiting his hometown of Vancouver.
We have to recount the facts of his passing with solemnity and clarity here, sticking strictly to the police and coroner reports.
On July 13, 2013, Cory Monteith was found dead in his room at the Fairmont Pacific Rim Hotel in Vancouver. He was 31 years old.
He had been staying there for a planned 7 nights, but when he failed to check out as scheduled that afternoon, hotel staff entered the room around noon and found his body.
The Vancouver Police Department immediately confirmed there was no foul play involved.
An autopsy was conducted swiftly 2 days later by the British Columbia Coroner's Service.
And the preliminary report was factual and direct. It stated that Monteith died from a mixed drug toxicity consisting of heroin and alcohol.
The official finding ruled the death accidental, not intentional.
The final, detailed report was released a few months later, and it provided the necessary context for the public to understand the full scope of the tragedy.
It confirmed the initial findings, but added that he also had codeine and morphine in his system.
And drug paraphernalia was discovered in the room. Specifically, a spoon with drug residue and a used hypodermic needle.
They also noted the presence of 2 empty bottles of champagne.
And this is where the coroner's report provides the most crucial context. It's the detail that really underscores the accidental nature of his passing.
Resulting directly from his effort to maintain sobriety.
It's a tragic irony.
It is. The report confirmed that Monteith had experienced these intermittent periods of drug abuse and then abstinence throughout his life. This medical fact is the key. The coroner specifically wrote that after a period of cessation from opioid drug use, a previously tolerated drug concentration level may become toxic and fatal.
So his body's tolerance to opioids had diminished significantly during his recent successful month of treatment.
Exactly. When he relapsed, the dose he took, a dose that perhaps his body could have metabolized before his period of abstinence, was suddenly overwhelming and lethal.
It's the final, cruel reality of addiction. The very mechanism of recovery, the lowering of tolerance, made the possibility of a fatal relapse exponentially higher.
Following the devastating news, the immediate response from the Glee team was profound grief. And of course, the necessity to adapt the show's production schedule around the tragedy.
Lea Michele and Glee creator Ryan Murphy held an emotional, private celebration of life for him in Los Angeles. It was attended by the cast, crew, and close colleagues from the network and studio.
And the tragedy had a tangible, immediate impact on the professional life of the show.
After consulting closely with Lea Michele, the showrunners wisely postponed the start of production for Glee's 5th season.
It was moved from late July to August, and this emotional necessity caused the season premiere to be pushed back by a full week.
Which demonstrates how integral he was to the fabric of the show, and how much time was needed for the team to grieve.
And the most visible and profound television tribute came later that season. The special 3rd episode of Season 5 was titled The Quarterback.
That episode served as both a tribute to Cory Monteith and a narrative explanation for the death of his character, Finn Hudson.
It was a remarkably difficult feat of acting and production. It required the cast to grieve their real-life friend while portraying the grief of their characters.
And Ryan Murphy made it clear that Finn's memory wouldn't be erased by that one tribute episode. He stated that they would keep mentioning Finn, so that resonates throughout the year.
The character's memory, his influence as the moral center and leader of the New Directions, would remain an integral, ongoing element of the show's narrative, a constant echo of the loss.
And the wider industry also acknowledged the loss of a talented young actor.
The 65th Primetime Emmy Awards, held that September, featured a dedicated, extended tribute to Monteith,
which was powerfully presented by his Glee co-star, Jane Lynch.
He was also later included in the emotional In Memoriam segment of the 56th Grammy Awards, cementing his place in the collective memory of the entertainment industry.
Beyond the formal professional tributes, there was a particularly touching fan-driven commemoration that really showcased the depth of the emotional connection he forged with the audience.
The star.
Yeah. Glee fans raised money to name a star for him. And this act was directly inspired by a scene featuring his character on the show, where he shares this heartfelt moment under the night sky.
It just illustrates the way his character and his real-life persona blended into something profoundly meaningful for the viewers.
It really does.
And finally, there's one last haunting, sad echo that connects his passing to the rest of the Glee family.
Naya Rivera.
Naya Rivera, who is not only his co-star but also a close friend, they co-hosted the Glee A Day Media Awards together. She tragically died in an accidental drowning in July 2020.
And her body was recovered on July 13th, 2020.
Which, by a heartbreaking coincidence, was the 7th anniversary of Cory Monteith's death. This shared date, this final, deeply sad echo, it links their legacies in a way that remains profoundly moving for everyone who followed the show.
Bringing this detailed analysis of the source material to a close, we're left with the story of a life that achieved a pinnacle of public success in a remarkably short time, but whose narrative was ultimately dominated by a persistent, unseen private struggle.
It's the story of an individual who overcame tremendous early instability, the dependency starting at 13, the rootless life across 16 schools, to find his footing as an actor.
He achieved massive international recognition, essentially performing stability and social ease as the star quarterback.
All while, as the sources clearly document, carrying the immense life-threatening burden of his unresolved dependency.
And his philanthropic efforts, particularly focused on supporting youth and marginalized communities, they stand as a powerful testament to his inherent good nature, a desire to help others find the stability he lacked.
If you look at the entire arc contained in these sources, you have to reflect on the immense and distorting pressure that must accompany rapid global fame.
Especially when that fame is paired with a pre-existing chronic and life-threatening condition like substance addiction. The spotlight just amplifies internal chaos, making private recovery nearly impossible.
And perhaps most significantly, this analysis highlights the delicate and ultimately deadly nature of relapse when physical tolerance has been diminished due to periods of abstinence and recovery.
The coroner's report stands as a medical confirmation of this tragic irony.
His very effort to get clean and live a healthy life made his body physically vulnerable to a single misstep. This narrative highlights how the complex realities of an individual's life and the biology of addiction often clash violently with the public's perception of effortless celebrity.
Thank you for joining us for this comprehensive discussion and factual analysis of the source material provided.
We hope this provided you with the necessary context and detailed understanding surrounding the life, professional legacy, and tragic circumstances of Cory Monteith.
Thanks for listening.